I hate creating these podcasts and sounding so depressed, but this is, I've had a really big setback. I tried tightening this sump plug and it's spinning. And now what makes it worse is I can't even get the flipping thing back out. I'm going to have a bit of a go further, but if I can't get that out, I've got to drop the sump again, which means I've got to drop the front subframe again. I really don't want to have to dismantle everything I've done. I mean, you know, seemingly that would mean disconnecting all the steering, taking off the anti-roll bar, dismantling the suspension. I hope to goodness that's not what I have to do. I've been told that if you can drop the subframe a bit, you can usually squeeze the pan out from under the engine. You can see it's quite tight. That's the issue, is just there, the gap between the subframe here and the bottom of the sump pan. I never thought I'd be in this position again. So the engine's hanging on the beam bar, and here's what I've discovered underneath. I don't know if you can see this, but there's absolutely no way this sump is going to come out with the subframe in place. I've dropped the subframe slightly, but I'm really worried about damaging the oil pickup pipe in the sump, because I've got the baffle, and if I wrench this around, it's just going to push against the pickup pipe and do some damage there. So I'm afraid I'm resigned to the fact that I'm going to have to take the subframe out again. But what I'm hoping to do is not have to dismantle it all, although I'm going to have to get some help getting it back in. I'll have to undo the top mounts up there. Everything else is actually on the subframe, so the steering rack, the steering rack, all of the suspension, the anti-roll bar, it's all hanging off the subframe. So it's just a matter of dropping the whole thing. Getting it all back in one go is going to be fun. I'll probably have to, I'll also undo the brake pipes and the ABS sensors, because I don't want to wrench those out. So I'll have to do that as well. Really, that's the only safe way to do this, because I think I'm going to do some damage if I don't drop the subframe. Let's have a talk about dropping the subframe for the purposes of getting the sump out. So you can see I've disconnected the brake lines, I've disconnected the ABS cable. If you've got the brake pad wear cable on the near side, you'll need to disconnect that, obviously. Then I've undone the top mounts, top suspension mounts. When I started by putting a jack underneath the lower ball joint on the front here, and took the weight, obviously, so that the thing didn't come crashing down as I undid the nuts on the top mount. So I took the weight, undid the nuts, then slowly lowered it. That seems okay. Nothing's fouling on the front. The steering boot is touching, just about touching the anti-roll bar there, but it's not like, you know, the steering arm's not jammed up against it, so that's fine. Then the other things I did up here, this water pipe, I disconnected that from the subframe, took the 3 screws out, 2 there and 1 over there. And I also have loosened this. The pipe that goes into the steering, the PAS cooler, comes across here. You can see it's that red pipe just down here. I don't want to take that off, because it means I've got to disconnect it from the steering pump, and then I'm going to, you know, one of the things I had was a PAS fluid leak, and I don't want to settle that off again. So I'm reluctant to disconnect the pipes and reconnect them. So I'm leaving that in place. It's all clamped onto the steering rack, and the steering rack is clamped onto the subframe, so that should be good. And it's just this pipe, but there's enough slack now in all of this, and it will all just lower down, so that's fine. Note also here that I've removed the intermediate steering shaft. and that's it. So I'm hoping not to lower it all the way to the floor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use axle stands and lower it down enough to get the sump out safely, but not take it all the way to the floor. And also for safety, I've decided I'm going to put the wheels back on it, because if it drops, then at least it will fall onto the wheels and not just come crashing down onto the discs. I tried hanging the wheel off the wheel hub, and you can see what's happened. The whole lot's just dropped. I don't think I've done any damage. Nothing's actually binding with anything else. So it's okay, but obviously hanging the wheels for safety is not going to work. So I think what I'm going to do is just put a couple of old wheels on their sides underneath the discs, so that if the thing drops, it'll just drop onto the tyre of the old wheels. So you can see what I've done. I've put the tyre underneath it's actually the calipers resting on it, but you know what? I don't think this scheme is going to work, because I think what's going to happen is, as I lower the subframe, this is going to flip inwards, and if I'm not careful, I'm going to take a chunk out of the wing. So all things considered, I think I'm just going to have to let them hang and slowly just hope that I don't drop the thing on the floor. I don't think there's another way, really. I might put some cardboard on the floor underneath, which might absorb some of the shock, but I mean, perhaps the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get a bent back plate, but I can always straighten that out, I guess. I've dropped the subframe about, what is that? That's about 75 to 100 mil. So what's 100 mil? That's 4 inches, isn't it? About 4 inches down. And hopefully I'm going to be able to get the sump out. Nope, that's not going to do it. It's still fouling on all sorts of things. What's that under there? Oh, it's where the steering rack attaches. Yeah, it's fouling on the bell housing, or call it what you will, of the front of the gearbox. It just won't clear it. So I'm going to have to drop it further. Surprisingly, it seems quite evenly weighted. It is coming down slightly nose heavy first, but quite even, actually. Quite surprising. I'm going to have to be so careful, because the steering rack spline is quite close to the engine mount over there, so I need to be careful of that. Just looking around, everything else looks okay. I mean, obviously I've had the front subframe off before, so there shouldn't be too many surprises. So I've dropped it about another inch, I think. If you look over here at just there's the engine mount. So there's the flat surface of the engine mount, and there's where it would normally sit. So what's that? Actually, no, that's about 4 inches, isn't it? That's about 100 mil, I reckon. Okay. Tilt it up a bit. Close. I'm not sure it's going to come out though. So I'm going to have to drop it lower. Pretty sure. Yeah. I'm trying to be careful, because obviously the yaw pickup is behind there, so we'll drop it a bit further. Right. I've dropped it about another inch, I think. Maybe not quite an inch. So let's see if we can get it out now. Oh man, this isn't easy. It's still, yeah, it's still not clear of the back of the gearbox, and I'm really now concerned I'm going to damage this gasket. Whilst I reckon if I force it I could get it out, but that doesn't seem like a good idea. So I think we'll drop it a bit further. Okay, I've lowered it a bit further. I've brought a tape measure underneath here with me, so we'll measure it in a sec if this is the right level. Just let me see if I can get the pan out first. Sump, keep calling it pan. Turning American. Oh yeah, look. There you go. That's it. Oh, thank goodness for that. And I can't see any visible damage to the oil pickup, so that's good. Okay, so let's see how far I had to drop it. So if we swivel that down to there, and what we'll do is we'll measure from the engine mount down to the, I know this isn't very precise because it's at a bit of an angle. Oh, well, it's 10 centimetres, about 4 inches. So my advice is, if you've got to do this, don't do what I did where I loosened it all off and kept trying it. What I would do is undo most of the bolts, but leave most of the bolts that hold in the sump oil pan, but leave 2 in just to hold it there. And then drop the subframe 4 inches, then undo the final 2 bolts, and then pull the sump out. Because then you'll have less messing around and less chance of damaging the oil pickup pipe. One thing I should add here, obviously I'm doing this because I'm building this 116 trophy car, and I've already deleted the AC. If you've got the AC still installed, you're going to have other considerations, because I'm not quite sure how the pipe work at the front will work out. So you may have to detach more pipes from the subframe, and just make sure that you don't actually end up pulling all the air conditioning pipe work out of the car. Here's the sump plug causing the problem. Now, it's a lot of reflection there, but I don't know if you can just about see. There's like a strand of metal there. And also in the bottom of the sump, I spotted a few little metal fragments that look like wire, and they look like they've come off of this this sump plug here. Now, I don't know if I can't think what I've done to cause this. So I did run up the sump plug. I screwed it in by hand, and then I ran it up with my power wrench, but I did it with really soft hands. So as soon as it clicked into place, as soon as it hit the it tightened, I immediately let go of the trigger. I don't think that did it. I think what might have done this is where I've been trying to unwind the thread and it just won't unwind, and all it's doing is scooping metal out and causing this sort of long strand. I'm sure that will break off. Yeah, there you go. So I've sort of resigned myself to the fact that I'm going to have to buy another sump, and then there'll come the question, do I cut the baffle out and put it back in the sump, or do I just run without a baffle, which apparently a lot of people do. So it's not unusual. You just need to make sure you keep your oil levels correct. As you can see, I got the plug out. This is the plug. So the threads are either completely full of something or they're completely stripped, one of the two, because it's quite smooth. There's just the sign of a thread pattern in there, but I'm not going to risk it. It's just too risky. I'm not even going to try. And I did think, well, I could run a tap through it, but no, it's way too risky. So this sump is scrap. I did this to protect the discs. Just use empty cardboard boxes. The other one, the other side, actually has some packing material in it, but it's quite good because it's enough to support it. But as you can see, it deforms and gives.